The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Hans Petter Dalen, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Hans Petter, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. And first time I have someone from IBM as well, so welcome to The Only Constant.
Thank you very much, and it's such an honor to be here. I go by HP, and if you're old enough to remember both HP and IBM, you're probably older than 35.
Yes, I do remember both of them. Yeah. I also remember Compaq, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You've been around.
I've been around.
Yeah, you've been around, yeah.
So I can call you HP from IBM, and that sounds like people will be like, what's going on? You know?
That's my email address, yeah.
I love it. So Hans Petter, everyone's talking about AI right now, and everyone's looking for how to actually, get to work with AI. What are, in your opinion, and maybe also the opinion of IBM, what is some of the common business areas for AI transformation?
The obvious one is automation, right? Automation of any cumbersome process. But I think we should probably just take a few steps back. If you don't mind, and I know you're a historian, so you might be interested. You know the history anyway. The term was coined in the 50s. 3 students, if I recall correctly, artificial intelligence. And I jokingly said at the start here that if you're younger than 35, maybe you don't know IBM. And that might be true, because we're very much in the business-to-business space. So consumer electronics, consumer software, that kind of thing is not our thing anymore. But I think there's a study on that you touch IBM technology between 35 and 50 times per day as a consumer anyway, but we're sort of the glue that it sticks everything together. We've been, and the reason why I give this intro is we've been working with what we now commonly refer to as machine learning technologies since late 50s. So AI didn't happen in 2023. I know you know this.
Everyone remember IBM also from this, scare, Watson 2011, right?
2011,
yeah. Exactly. Where everyone's like, oh no, AI is coming to take everything now.
The robots, yeah. But even before then, in the 90s, Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov in chess. That's the first time a machine actually beat a human, right? So the point of this is actually that we've seen decades with a lot of investment into this technology and then decades without it. And the without investment is what we call as AI winters, right? So we've been through a couple of AI winters. The latest wave of investment was actually, as you said, kickstarted in 2011 when IBM's Watson technology beat 2 reigning champions in the TV show Jeopardy, combining natural language skills and generation with machine learning, right? So that's the birth of assistants. And you've used horrific assistants that, made you pull your hair out and think, oh God, just take me to human now, right? And there are still a lot of assistants like that out there.
Siri. Sorry, I said that.
Yes. And then, of course, OpenAI happened in 2022, 2023, generative AI. We couldn't spell to AI last year without talking about generative AI. No. This year, we don't spell to AI without talking about agentic AI, which is sort of the next technology step in this journey. So I think to make a very long sort of introduction short, where is the applicability of AI? It's stupid to say everywhere, but for a company, start with automation. You have so many processes and workflows that are inefficient. AI can help you without actually revolutionizing how you run your business. But we in IBM we have adopted AI use cases for a long time, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, Lasse. The fact that we have a $3.5 billion savings.
I know about that.
Yeah. But it's more things like we have automated 96% of our HR using an assistant that is slowly evolving into an agent. So it now does some things in the back end for us as end users and managers and leaders. And that's sort of the promise of this technology. It will be infused in your workflows, in your processes. But don't just look at automation either. I think it's for generative AI in particular and agentic, generative AI in particular. We can talk about that too. It's the promise of the value add. But how do you measure how much additional value you get out of a good AI?
I always say, let's demand a KPI from generative AI.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Last year, IT-branchen here in Denmark had a survey. It's about a year old now. That's that only about 5% of the sandbox experimentation that we do with Gen AI ends up in production. That was true for Denmark. It was probably true for the world as well. So while we talk a lot about agentic in 2025 happens in the sandboxes. Generative we're starting to adopt more generative into our core business processes.
I said already a couple of years ago that we should look at some of the we should not necessarily have an AI framework right now because it's too immature. But let's build it into the frameworks we already have. Let's use it in some small, text boxes on our websites. Let's put it into an RPA flow. Let's put it into something like that, right? Let's build it into the things where we know how to manage it at some point, right?
And we must
it a small part of it.
And we mustn't forget that machine learning is still by far the biggest form of AI that we operationalize, right? Yeah. More than 65% is still machine learning based. We understand that technology. It's cheap. It's easy. We understand the risks.
It's transparent.
It's explainable. Even we can do it safely and in a trustworthy way, if you like that word. But I spoke to Gartner at the start of this year, and we had this conversation. Right, what happens with Gen AI in 2025? And Gartner said, well, we will start to operationalize it in our core business processes, because when you ask the insurance industry or the financial services industry, 94% of companies use Gen AI on a daily basis.
Yeah, well,
but if you poke into that, it's personal productivity.
Yeah, you have these companies where it's like, we've someone who was up for an award for some CIO of the year somewhere. I can't remember where in the world, but his main accomplishment was that he's rolled out Copilot in the organization.
It's personal productivity, and that's okay as a tool.
But it was easy. It was 2024. We need to have 5 AI use cases this year. What can you give to it? I can give you a ChatGPT. I give you a Copilot, I can give you a custom GPT, and then there we go, right? Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of companies did. But now we're moving into another space, right? AI and workflows, right?
And workflows. And I keep going back to what McKinsey said in 2023. They said there's actually 4 really, really good areas for Gen AI. Customer operations is so obvious, isn't it? But are you as a company ready to unleash generative AI to your clients? One interesting point I think it's worth just reflecting on is these large language models, they're probably trained on all available public data on the planet, but less than 1% is enterprise data, right? So how can you secure a generative AI use case unless you enrich it with your own enterprise data and you control it, right?
But also what you just said, it's trained on all that available data that everyone has access to. So how do you differentiate with that? And I've said it also before, I think customer operations, it makes sense, marketing, all that. I think that's going to be something we move away from again, because we find out we need to differentiate more to get the message out. Yeah. And also that our customers are actually maybe the most important. Of course, when you have something, what's the status of my package? Okay. maybe, right? But we need to have a very clear line on where we go with that and where we don't go with that.
I think our digital literacy...
Customers are important for
it is,
right?
but customers are becoming more and more digitally literate as well. So they expect less from a human and more from a digital interface.
But you can also be very sure they are very, very, very annoyed if they get a bad AI agent.
100%.
Yeah.
They're going to hate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the number one issue for generative AI adoption when we talk about anything else than personal productivity is how do you overcome the trust, the trust challenge. And Gartner told me in January, I think it was February maybe, they said, so trust is only important when you're immature. And basically every organization on the planet is immature when it comes to adopting generative AI at scale as an enterprise in your core business processes. Once you overcome that issue or that problem, cybersecurity becomes your number one area that you focus on, because your data fuels your AI, and suddenly you need to data protection is much more important than anything else.
Yeah, we should be talking about shadow AI. I've spoken about that in a couple of episodes lately. Also, what is employees using it for things they shouldn't be using it for? One thing, right? Also for processes and for writing mails to customers where they shouldn't, but also for saying that. But there are things that you shouldn't use an AI for.
100%.
Yeah, and then saying also all the different apps you have in the landscape they're suddenly using AI as well, and where they're pushing it, where they're throwing the data.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Okay. On average, some industries are worse than others, but on average, 40% of the AI an enterprise use is embedded in business applications they buy from someone else, right?
Yeah.
I listened to the episode with SAP. SAP have plenty of AI embedded into application that they sell. How do you as a company make sure that AI performs consistently? Do you understand how it was trained? But that's SAP's secret sauce. Will they give it up? Will they even declare that there is AI in this product? Some cloud suppliers probably won't. Then you go to the EU, and as a regulator, as a minimum, I expect you to have an inventory of all the AI your company use as a minimum, and have that risk classification as well. So it's really, 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 really difficult from a governance and compliance perspective. Let's not overcomplicate it, but at least as somebody that procures software from somebody else, the people that procure that software needs to have really, really, really great levels of AI literacy. AI literacy is the key here. Right?
Yeah, but is that even enough? Right. The problem here is that we had complicated software before.
Yes.
Now we have complex software.
Yeah.
Because you can't really unfold what's going on. And you saw, I think, the curtain fall, and we all knew this working in the AI space, but the big curtain fall was a couple of weeks ago, I think. Was it both with the Chanman thing for DeepSeek, of course, but then you also had ChatGPT, I think, wasn't it ChatGPT went out and said that it was too sycophantic. Oh, sorry, we tuned up the sycophantic. And, it was praising you too much. So we tuned it down a little bit again. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so this model is not, it's definitely not neutral.
No, it's not. It's bias. We're talking about bias.
And we're turning some things dials up and down that I don't know who's turning up and down and for what reason. Yeah. And so people are using, is this a good post? Is this a good email? Always write, like, someone else wrote this email to me. Is this crap? Like, I don't know. It's really difficult to ask, right?
It is. I read an interview with the head of global recruitment in Joe and the Juice. He's Danish. Brilliant. I thought this is brilliant. He's getting it now. They get thousands, probably tens and thousands of people applying for Joe and the Juice globally every year. And I said it used to be difficult because, they were trained on how to write a CV and use that language. But now every single one of them use ChatGPT to write their CVs and the cover letter. I said they're identical to the comma. I can be annoyed. I can try and fight that, he said. I would lose. So for me, it's a question, how do I coexist with this new reality? So what they've done, I thought this is brilliant. What they've done is they've created a bot, or an assistant, or not an agent, an assistant, that does the first interview. So first of all, every single one of them gets a first interview. And it's based on Joe and the Juice company values, and you're actually scored against how well your own personal values coincide with Joe and the Juice company values. So the improvement in diversity globally is incredible. And the evolution of their company values is also incredible. And as they've taken what could be potentially a very, very difficult situation, and they've just turned that into an advantage. And when you look at university professors, they say, well, everybody's using ChatGPT. Yes. Live with it, it's you
can't sit at home reading assignments anymore. I think it's the same. Wasn't it also David who said that on the podcast, that he had these consultants where they had gone into a workshop and suddenly someone said, I had ChatGPT produce the same results for you. So I think that what we need to go back into is of course purpose and relevance, but also performativity.
Yeah, exactly.
I say performativity is important.
Yeah.
That's why the applicants for Joe and the Juice are performing the application, and the consultant is performing the workshop, and that's what you're going to pay for in the future. Performativity.
Yeah. We're just going to change business models, of course. And adapt how we use this. And university professors, you have to get used to. Now you have to test your students.
Have to be even more present.
Exactly. And it's maybe not about the outcome that's produced, augmented by some sort of AI, but it's their ability to learn.
But was an education ever about the outcome?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was all
the process.
Exactly. The process of learning. Yeah. Gaining. Yeah. Exactly.
So we talked about just a little bit about the customer operations and all the marketing. And all those things.
Sales and marketing was the second one. Research and development used across pharma already, extensively. We talk about shadow AI. I've spoken to so many heads of AI in pharma. I'm not going to mention any companies. Not Danish. That's all I'm going to say. Although I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen here either, but certainly not.
Are there any pharma companies not Danish?
No, and the reality for maybe a decade is that somebody had a good idea, went to an AI engineer, and together they thought it was a good idea, and they launched a use case. And now they don't know where it sits, how it performs, what state it in, right? So the emerging chief AI officer, which is becoming a role now, AI discovery, shadow AI discovery. How do you actually find the AI that's already out there? Wow, which cloud could be different clouds, could be different. Yeah.
So many people have called on the podcast, said that the only constant is that we add more complexity whenever we do something smarter.
Well, that's why we're still here, I guess.
Exactly. It's a process. It's not an outcome.
Always. The last one is software engineering, and
of course.
IBM being. How old do you think IBM is?
You are from the 30s.
Oh, we're older.
Really? Oh.
It will celebrate our 114th birthday.
Okay, that's more than... I knew you were older than I would have... most people would say post-Second World War, but I knew it was before. I just didn't think it was... 30s or depression, maybe I should... Okay, anyway, that's fine.
The point is, you only survive in technology if you have the ability to re-innovate yourself and be... So I also jokingly say that we're probably the oldest, the world's most mature startup, because we have that mentality still. But because of our legacy, we also introduced the mainframe to the world. That's our biggest gift to the planet, probably.
Thank you so much.
You should be grateful. It's a great system, but it's programmed in COBOL. And we don't produce a lot of COBOL programmers nowadays, right? So they're far and few between, and they're very pricey. So we've introduced this concept of, well, let's use AI to transform your COBOL to Java.
Exactly.
And that's such a great use case, right?
Code is nice because code is purely semantic, but code semantic, right? And it's purely virtual. It doesn't have a real world context to it. It never had, really, to be honest, in essence. So it makes super sense to write code with AI agents.
It's such a nice use case, right? Yeah.
But it's also more than just a use case for writing code, because people are okay, and then I always need to tell people that but now you have to imagine all the things in your world today.
Yeah.
Being managed by digital machines or IoT enabled or car, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Everything, everywhere. Yeah. And how that can all be manipulated by code.
Yeah.
And there you have the potency of AI agents.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because people are like, how can a language model... I speak to a lot of CFOs, right? Mm-hmm. And I heard this a lot. We have structured transactional data. What do I need a language model for? Yeah, you need it because that kind of data is easy to manipulate with code.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So that also brings me to, I wanted to ask you, what about the dark horses, right? Because the customer operation, the marketing, the things that sounds languagey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well.
But I think, as I said before, I actually think that's not going to be the places you want to put it in the future. But I think transactional stuff I don't know. Now I've already said the answer to my own question. Sorry about that. I should do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're not producing less data, are we, or less transactions, right? I still think there's a significant maturity gap. I tend to look at IBM with 6,500 AI use cases in production, automating 96% of our HR. So when I talk about AI, I sometimes feel like I'm, talking to, how can I say that without insulting anybody? It's taken us 15 years to get there, right? And a lot of trial and error. And also a lot of which structures do you have in place to make sure that your business units have literacy and autonomy and all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk more about that, but we're still operationalizing basically machine learning models. The rest of what we do is experimentation and personal productivity. Personal productivity is good as a vehicle for AI adoption and to understand some of it, but
it's impossible to put a KPI on. That's
100% right. And if you save an hour per day, that's good for you. It's good for your company if you contribute that hour back to your company. But how do you measure that?
I think I've said this also. It was Gartner who said that most of it's spent on coffee breaks, right?
It is, or leaving an hour earlier, right? Yeah. And then so you can't claim $3.5 billion in improvement, because how do you measure it? So I think the transactions that you said, that's a good bet actually. Because at the rate that we produce new data and at the speed that we transact now is just massive. We've spoken about Internet of Things for 20 years, right?
Yeah, big data and
exactly
all that, right? But I also say that from my automation background, I've done a lot of. There was always this focus on the process.
Yeah.
But I always slightly, I don't know. I felt sometimes slightly autistic by doing that. But I always said, okay, a process is just a data transaction. Yeah. So where do you take the data from? People couldn't speak about the process because they didn't know it. But then I'd ask them, what applications are you opening? I'm opening this, and when I start my computer, okay, because you need to get that from there. Okay, that's the process. It's a transaction, right?
Yeah.
And that's, all of IT has been about data transaction and automation. Automation has always been what it's all about. We want to automate some data going from somewhere to something, right? To do something with it. So that is the potential, right? To accelerate
absolutely
IT that way by making these transactions faster and more cross-silo, right? And more cross-domain and end-to-end.
And having trusted AI supervise a lot of this as well, most of it. You're not going to remove the human in the loop. I've had podcasts for the human in the loop. It's essential. I think it's also essential that for IBM, the A in AI, artificial, isn't necessarily the purpose, what we consider the purpose of the technology. It's not to replace human intelligence with something that's artificial. So we whenever it's possible, we said the A is actually augmented intelligence. So it's there to augment human intelligence. So that means the machine is always going to serve the human, right? It's not going to be the other way around.
Yeah, but except when you save 8,000 people in HR in the UK, was it a couple of days ago? What humans is it serving then?
Well, you are repurposing humans.
Also those that were laid off?
Of course. Well, not laid off, they're repurposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I think
well, I know there is, and I have the number. I know you're going to ask about the three.
I'm going to ask about it, and maybe I should just do it now. Okay, so you claimed that you had, $3.5 billion saved from AI automation, right? And now you're saying they repurpose people, right? But you don't save $3.5 billion by repurposing, right? No. And another thing to that, let's get to that. I think that's interesting, right? A lot of people are asking about that and thinking about that as well. We're all going to get unemployed. I don't think that's the case because there's still lots of work out there, right?
Of course.
And we just talked about all the complexity we're adding all the time, but companies, they also, a lot of people want to know, companies see these big numbers like this thrown around all the time, right? 6 billion, trillions, right? We were talking trillions from analyst reports on Gen AI. Yeah. And now IBM is coming out with something in, I don't know, it's always these nice soft colors, right? From everyone saying something with big numbers in it. And I'm bored to death
Yep.
of those kind of
That's
presentations,
fine.
right?
And you challenged me too on that.
Okay.
So
So I'm just asking you, you know, like Shakespeare asking, what's in a name? I want to ask you, what's in a number? What's in this number? What does it actually mean? Is there $3.5 billion I can find on your yearly revenue statement, or where is it?
So we are a publicly listed company. So somebody somewhere in IBM have signed off that we can use $3.5 billion publicly as a savings from AI. That said, of course, we have to understand some of the internal workings of IBM as well, right? So we have, in order to build a risk framework related to AI, so IBM recognized that there can be harmful use of AI, right? So we spend a lot of time understanding the risk associated with the use cases, and then every business unit is represented in what we call our AI ethics board. If you want to call it ethics, that's fine. It's just an ethics, an AI board that says, right, we want to adopt AI at scale. At the same time, we want business units to have autonomy to adopt as much as possible. So we need to have a common risk framework. We are willing to go here, and that's over and beyond whatever regulation, right? We might touch on regulation at some point, but that's not the point here. The point is your risk appetite as an enterprise. And then each business unit have the ROI, right? We're not going to invest 2 million to save 1 million, you know? It's up to each business unit to define the KPIs and the ROIs associated with them. We have a couple of principles when we started this journey, and the journey was, the goal is by the end of 2024 to have $2 billion in savings. And the result was $3.5 billion, right? I'll give you as much granularity as I can. Some of these KPIs will never reveal, but somebody has signed off on them, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I just have to trust you.
You will have to
trust me. And the soft colors. Oh, whatever.
Well, so it's the principles behind these driving this is to eliminate operating complexity. Easy. No, it's not. It's actually very complex. Simplifying our own end-to-end workflows. We're a small agile company. Automating manual tasks. And we're quite open about that. If you have an HR education and you're quite happy responding to employees asking how many holidays they've got left, IBM isn't a company for you anymore.
But you have scale, right, to make sure this makes sense, right? So the small startup is obviously a joke, right? But you want to say that's the mentality, and every IT company wants to say that. But at the same time, you can only save this money because you have scale as well, right?
Of course it is. And as a small Danish company, no, you can't expect that. You don't even have this cost level, right?
You can't fire 100 HR employees if you only have 5.
Exactly. So and of course, deploy AI across all operations and all that. But so the number comes from, we have increased supply chain productivity by 95%. There's a lot of savings in that. And that's not one use case driving that. There's a long list of use cases that we've applied in our supply chain operations, and we've increased productivity with 95%. That's a big number. Very happy to delve into individual use cases, not in this podcast. We can do this as a follow-up if you want, where we go more. And I'm not going to use delve into because that ChatGPT language.
Well, now you said it. You didn't write it, but it's okay. Delve into. Yeah, exactly. ChatGPT word.
I'm not going to say that. We have, and this is very precise.
Now he's using M dashes as well. Anyway.
$191 million annualized savings in customer support. That's very precise. Not so precise, but we have 600 plus million optimization and 30% infrastructure cost savings across IT.
So,
and finally, 40% savings in the HR operating budget. So these are the underlying numbers that are driving the 3.5 billion, right? And we can talk about the use cases driving this.
Okay, but the funny thing I want to know about here, and maybe you don't know, but is how much is this then added to the IT complexity and the IT management team?
That I don't know. No, that I don't know. But that's a very good question.
Because that's always, sort of, that sometimes it's the lift shift you do when you do automation, right? So you move it out of there. So those budgets are nice and clean. But then there's a ramp up somewhere else, and that affects the total books.
And of course, we have less HR partners than we had 2 years ago. Of course we do. Because as an employee or a manager, you don't no longer need an HR partner to move employees.
But it's also unfair for me to ask you, and I said this before, so I think I've asked you this before and on this 3.5 billion,
fine.
because the problem is that everyone wants to have these numbers. You said it's been vetted, someone signed off of it, but everyone wants these numbers, especially if you're building AI. You want to say big numbers like this. You want to say this. It's so you bundle things maybe, or you don't tell about the cost on the other side. Or?
So I think the proof is in the number of AI use cases you operationalize.
But it also gets tangible and that's when you lay off 8,000 people in the UK.
Yeah.
Even though you said repurposing.
Well, not everyone is repurposed, right? No. And of course I've been in IBM a few years. Yeah. 25.
It's a funny thing, right? We can't talk about this when we're talking about automation, right? That is supposed to, but it's difficult to talk about.
But my point, when I joined IBM in 2000, we were probably 500,000 people globally. I don't know what the number is now, but probably around 250,000. Okay, we have separated Kyndryl out as a separate unit and all that. But of course, a lot of that is planned reduction because automation.
It's just a different type of labor arbitrage as opposed to outsourcing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And you're absolutely 100% right. If you want to automate, the prize is less employees.
Yeah.
There's saving in that, but don't have that as your only target for AI, because that becomes a very sort of, then you're sort of blindfolded to only automation and
but you're not afraid at all, Hans Petter, and maybe this could be a personal note, but that you end up like Klarna and hiring some of them back again.
Could be, absolutely, could happen. You never know.
I spoke to Surajit about this in an episode that's not out yet when we record now, but that people is also culture and companies culture as well, right? But if we replace suddenly 95% of HR employees with AI agents, what are we doing to the culture then, and what's happening to the company? And what do you think here?
Yeah, and what drives a company's innovative ability, right? And where do you automate, I think, becomes the question then.
The purpose is the human, isn't it? Aren't they?
Yeah, always. And as I said, 114 years old in technology, it's because of IBM research, right? We are innovative in technology development, and a machine can't do that for us. A machine can augment our intelligence, can't replace our intelligence, right? So I've always been sort of in sales, that kind of roles. So it's easy for me to look at my 25 years in IBM. I've been in a sales organization, but when I stepped into an IBM research facilities for the first time and saw the kind of stuff that they're doing, I realized this is not a sales organization. This is actually a technology company. And you can do a lot with AI, except in IBM research, because they actually invent the things that AI do for us, right? So humans, of course.
There's always this thing, right? We don't need developers anymore in the future, except for these very important AI developers. We need them, of course, right?
And
we always need the people we have, but not the people you have, right?
I think
the arrogance in the market.
I know it is, and I think a lot of us will work on just keeping an eye on AI, that it performs consistently, right? Right now, I think this is my personal opinion, backed by Gartner and IDC and all that, but still my personal opinion is that AI is too much of an engineering tool, right? So we've given that to the engineers and we said, have fun with it, play with it, go to your sandboxes and see where it takes you. AI is a tool. You have a toolbox. It's got a hammer, it's got a screwdriver, it's got whatever. And if you use the screwdriver where you need the hammer, then you're picking the wrong tool. So,
we've given AI right now to engineers and influencers, saying two things, right? What can you do with this? How can we? And not necessarily what do we want to do, and also influencers just overinflate things and say things that are not connected to the truth. I think the disparity is always around people sitting there in their Excel sheets and their Word documents and.
Expectations are here and realization is here.
The real world is just super manual.
And exactly. And as I said initially, we work with companies, right? And I'll be very honest that several times a week we meet frustrated CFOs, CEOs. So we've invested millions and I've got 50K to show for it. Where's my return on investment? How can I achieve the kind of numbers that you, IBM, achieve? And our response to that is all about the use cases. But if you go to an agentic AI summit, for instance, where you have all the big players, you'll hear company A talk about their technology. You'll hear company B talk about their technology, and C about their technology.
That's the difficulty.
Whether it be Copilots or Bedrock or whatever, it's just about technology. This isn't about the technology, It doesn't matter what brand your hammer is. No. It's where you apply it. And so we have to talk about the use cases, right?
We have to talk about not necessarily just the use case, but the purpose.
And
it's the same thing, maybe. But I think when you talk about purpose, you can also say what data is relevant for it, what systems are relevant. Because also saying, and I want to also ask you a little bit about this, because you end up having this. People think they need to get all their data in order before they can do AI. That's not true either. You just need to have the relevant stuff ready. Relevance is the key word.
We can't wait for the world's data to become AI ready.
But it's just relevant, right? Yeah. The AI has to be relevant for a purpose. The data has to be relevant for the AI. Everything has to be relevant. The humans have to be relevant for what they're doing and not be irrelevant in the future. Exactly. All that, right? Relevance is a key word, right?
And AI models, AI use cases, AI whatever retires too because they become irrelevant or replaceable.
So when you say you have 100 million pounds or dollars or whatever saved in supply chain, you have $100 million in HR, you have 100 million everywhere, right? I must think there must be some people out here listening to this being like, oh, they must have all their data in order, because if they could scale that so quickly over the last 2 years.
We worked a lot with getting our data in order, and let's not forget that we are a technology company too, so that's an advantage in this space. We have,
but I know other technology companies where processes and data are very disparate, right? It's not a given when it's a given when you're small, maybe, but then as soon as you have more than 10 employees, it's a miss.
and of course, we don't have all our data in order, but we make the data to support the use case in order and governed. Data governance it's a huge part of getting your data ready.
But I almost think that must be the biggest feat of this.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I work a lot with how you govern AI to make that secure and to actually enable you to do this at scale. But companies in most countries across Europe, and I cover Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and in most of that area to talk more about, but data governance, a lot of our data governance happens in Excel sheets, and you should move away from that.
Also, all the times when you go out and talk to them, okay, we can do some analysis on your contracts if we do blah blah blah. Okay, but our contracts are in someone's full drawer somewhere or some local computer. I think, what?
It's not even digitalized. No,
I have no clue how many enterprises are like that.
Yeah.
Which scares me.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, we're talking about digitalization for decades.
Yeah, data transformation is like, okay, well, we'll make a team doing something out here in the sand, then we'll all, the rest of us will just keep on doing what we're doing, right? And also, we've been data driven. We've not really.
Buzzword.
Exactly.
We've been also to succeed with this. The thing that we've been talking about for 30 years, 3 things: people, processes, and tools. Still applies. Imagine that. We're not reinventing anything. It still applies. People, processes, and tools. Tooling is just one third of it, and probably the smallest part of what you need to succeed. So you need people to understand AI and not fear it. If you're an HR partner and you're happy, just responding to queries about how many holidays you've got left, fear it, But then if that's what you're happy with, you're not relevant for the future either, because the future has arrived and you can be replaced easily. And I'm sorry to sound harsh, but that is the reality, right? You've got a personal responsibility to stay relevant too.
Exactly. The relevance is, again.
Exactly. Processes, we have to look at our processes, and we have to adapt our processes as well. Shadow AI, we can't continue to deploy AI in silos. Of course we can't. And think about enterprise responsibility. Think about, we talk about understanding risk associated with AI, the AI use case, and we categorize them in 3. Regulatory risk, understand the EU AI Act, but you've got lawyers to help you with that anyway. Reputational risk, that's a big one, and that can hit your share price. And 1% on your share price, now we're talking money, right? But operational risk is, how do you actually operationalize this? How do you choose the right use cases? How do you make sure you have a good ROI analysis supporting your use case and your adoption of AI? And your board of directors are going to ask these questions now, right? So to me, one of the biggest threats to continued AI investment and innovation is that we don't operationalize enough AI, right?
We've been doing too many of the silly things to try it out that everyone knew was just to try out and get started, but suddenly a year later they started demanding things of that silly let's try it out thing, and now they're disappointed because that didn't work out. But they knew from the beginning this was novel technology, so they get disappointed at something they knew they shouldn't expect too much from.
Exactly.
And instead they should start a whole new wave of let's invest into things we expect things from, right?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that people will stop somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, that's my fear too. That we're not able to apply it to our core business processes. You know, that's a big threat. Sure.
Yeah. Getting it to touch upon the real world, right? But also I spoke to, again, on the surrogate one, we spoke about the whole, how do you get this into production, right? That's classic IT, and it's a change management thing. If you update things, you have to, and people are like, because people think that, can we just add an AI somewhere here, right? Surjit says that he went to someone, the CEO said, can you automate all of my customer services? And he was like, where are your SOPs and policies? We don't have that. We just know what to do. Well, it's not clairvoyant, the AI, he said back to the CEO. And I think that's the level that people are actually approaching this. So they know ChatGPT is super easy to use, costs $20. Then they go to consultant, so how much can you give me for $20,000? Like, not a lot.
Not much. Not much.
Because you need to inhibit this to make it productive and make it slightly autonomous. You need to spend time testing it. Unlimited capabilities means unlimited testing, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So if you could scream something from the top of a mountain to everyone, every sea level would hear you, what would you scream, Hans Petter?
Oh, I do climb tall mountains, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I do. I've been...
What are you going to scream the next time then?
Don't be scared of governance. Governance is not your enemy. It's not going to prevent you from innovating. It's not going to prevent you from succeeding. It's the opposite. It's the enabler. It's going to help you do this at scale. Governance is the one component you're missing from your AI strategy currently. And governance is what's going to make you operationalize all the things that you want to operationalize.
That was very forceful. That's very nice.
Quite passionate about this.
Yeah, but I also think you're right? And now it sounds like I'm just, rubbing you the right way, right? But we're being nice here. But compliance is right to play as well, right?
Of course it is. We are able to drive cars really, really fast because it has brakes.
And regulation, and
of course,
and we have different roads you can drive it fast on.
I do love the Brits, and I do have a slight British accent, so you get it. But I had a good giggle this morning. I read on LinkedIn a recent survey in the UK financial industry. So said, well, actually, we're scared of operationalizing AI because it's not regulated in the UK. And the paradox.
But this is exactly what Kate O'Neill said on my podcast in episode 50. She said, just because the AI market is deregulated does not mean you don't have responsibility.
No, of course not.
It just means that the responsibility is on you because no one's vetted it before you get it in your hands.
And I'm happy to talk about this as well, but is all regulation bad? Of course not. Is all regulation inhibiting innovation? Of course not. We can talk about the bureaucracy associated with it, and people look at America and say, well, that's not regulated. Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, but also people think they're moving so fast. But the problem is that it's not about who can make the fastest AI model.
No,
it's about who can make the most the market that has adopted it most broadly because it was pre-vetted, I think, to some extent.
And it's why is the regulation there in the first place? And in the EU, certainly, it's consumer protection. And we have to look at the EU Act the same way we look at product safety regulation, because that's basically what it is. But if you're an American company operating in the 50 American states, right now, at this moment, there are more than 200 AI regulations across the 50 states. And they have 500 more in the making. That's not easy. Then
and China was also out with AI, the first AI law before even that was a year in, half a year in, they came with a law.
Exactly.
And people are like, the EU is regulating. No,
we're
actually not.
And the EU is taking the right approach, we think, by actually recognizing that it can be used in harmful ways and risk classifying the use cases, right? And right, we don't do social scoring in Europe, so that's prohibited.
No, but I think that what everyone's so afraid of is this, and I think most are starting to realize also that the GDPR was over-implemented or overdone. It became, a constant allergic reaction, right? Meaning that businesses were afraid of doing things with personal data, and if developers were like, if this is personal data, I'm not touching it, but if it's not, I don't care, right?
But if we want to be nerds in that space, I mean, GDPR didn't come with any technical standards, so there wasn't a common understanding.
You know what? You're talking my language. You didn't even hear those episodes, I'm pretty sure, but I've spoken about this.
Yeah.
That I don't care about regulation. Regulation is fine, but you have to make the productive standards as well.
Exactly.
So you can say, now we create a market for it.
Exactly.
Then you're driving things. You just say no.
The EU are deliberately vague in how they, they use high quality data.
But you can't go around saying like Google Analytics is forbidden.
No,
I think the
of course
Danish
not.
data authorities have said at some point, because companies use it. And companies can't live without it. Companies just like what you can't just.
It's embedded, right, in our everyday. So.
Tomorrow, milk is forbidden. Can't do that.
Yeah, you'll get fat. Yeah,
you have to drink something else.
But for the EU Act and the high risk use cases with significant regulatory requirements, I would say, standardization organizations are going to help us. They're going to tell us what actually those requirements are, as opposed to GDPR, where nobody told us that. So that's still being determined by the courts of law, and that's the main difference here. So I think. We have to wait for the technical standards, right? But that's why we have an implementation period too.
Yeah.
So I know this is dull, but if you want to comply with the high risk requirements, wait for the technical standards. It's going to be the quickest and cheapest way to be compliant.
See when we get them, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. And just as an anecdote, because I think this is a very funny story, and I do have to apologize up front to our Swedish friends, but. Sensenelec and Etsy are the three European standardization organizations. Etsy is for telco, so they're not really in part of the committee that's doing the 10 technical standards. Etsy, but they of course provide input given that they're telco. There's a joint technical committee between Sen and Senelec that consists of representatives from national standardization bodies. So Norway have one. I'm Norwegian. Denmark have one, even the UK, but the UK can't vote.
I think it's nicer if we're bashing on Swedes because we're Danes.
Yeah, exactly. It's called the JTC 21, and they haven't capped the number of people that participates in the JTC. So at the moment, it's about 150, 180 people, and these people can spend a day discussing where the comma is, right? Love them. Absolutely, they're my people. Not that I could ever, but I'm glad that these people exist. They've chosen the Swedish method. Consensus decisions. This is going to take a long time. They try to avoid.
I also forgot about, the Norwegian method is actually to shout things from mountains.
That's
so
right.
maybe I should just barking up your tree, right? Please explain this, Hans Petter, in a consensus room instead. How would you explain this to Habermas? Anyway.
And the Danes, just make a decision. Come on, move on.
Let's move on. Someone make a decision. That's right. Yeah, but you get angry in Norway, right? That's how you do it, isn't it? I've heard about your political debates.
Oh, well, I mean, we have a very common history with the Danes, so we're lightweight Danes, aren't we?
Yeah, but I've just heard, that there's more aggression in your political debates and you're more opinionated. You're more outspoken on your opinions, right?
Yeah.
Swedes never do that.
No, Swedes no, and that's more a political culture issue, perhaps, that you have to take the serious debates as well, right? Without being afraid of insulting people.
So we're waiting for a consensus approach to standards.
Well, it's going to take time, but they've promised that they'll be ready in about a year, and that coincides with implementation period for high risk use cases that comes into play on 1st of August next year. So it's not that companies shouldn't prepare, but I always say regulatory requirements is probably the least of your worries, because you're not going to break the law anyway. As a company, you've got other.
If you're doing it.
Exactly, but as a company, you've got other ethical standards. Maybe you have a view on sustainability. Maybe it is a point, that you don't want a model that's so big that it requires a small nation's water consumption just to run it, and a clear trend that we and every analyst see this year is we are moving towards much smaller models that are more specifically trained for purpose, and particularly to support the agentic agenda. That's just
smaller focuses that can do things in a chain.
And then we're going to have multiple agents working together, and that's the reality across multiple small language models that are specifically trained to do specific tasks.
But let's just talk a little bit about, you said ethics and I want to talk morality and as well, right? Not deep into that, but I wanted to ask you also about, Gen AI might be one of the most potent technologies we've ever invented, right? And now every employee worldwide has access to it. Mm-hmm. So if you say this is an experiment, what is the hypothesis that we're trying to answer with that?
I was afraid of that question.
It's a difficult question, right? It's not a yes or no. Just say yes or no.
Yes.
It can't just be that OpenAI tried to
no, of course not. No, and I don't know if this is a true story, but it would be a typical IBM story. But a large language model is based off a foundation model, right? And a foundation model doesn't necessarily have to be a large language model. Foundation model is just trained on enormous amounts of data. It's self-supervised. That's sort of the foundation. It doesn't have to be a large language. No. And apparently IBM Research, we're working on foundation models, but we dropped it in 2016 because we didn't see a commercial potential. That would be very typical. But I think we've gone from AI can predict to AI can chat to AI can do for you. Agentic wouldn't happen without large language models. And large language models wouldn't happen without machine learning because it's basically algorithmic. Yeah. It's based on that anyway. So what is it trying to prove? I think it's trying to prove that AI, again, I think OpenAI genuinely think that this is technology that augments human intelligence. It's not going to replace the creative arts. It's not going to replace the artists, the musicians, the writers. It's going to augment it, So right now, I don't know if this even answers the question, but I think it's fundamentally meant to be AI for good. OpenAI is a research organization.
When you see students just writing, their assignments with AI, or
but when we got
don't we? A lot of people are saying that we think when we write, right? And we're inherently lazy, so we just move to the AI answer.
I don't know if there isn't one size fits all for a person, is there? I mean, we learn in different ways.
No, but my point is just, is this supposed to be something that everyone has access to? It's like, someone said, someone compared it at one point, I think, I don't know where I spoke to him about to nuclear power, right? Yeah. It's super potent. The good thing is it requires quite a heavy setup to... Luckily, it's not something you just make in your, in
your backyard.
In your backyard, exactly, right? No. But this is something you put in your backyard, right?
It does democratize knowledge.
Yeah.
I think we have to recognize risks again. I mean, deep fakes and whatever, and
the obvious ones, but also the small erosion ones, right? Of knowledge and thinking. That's the ones that are worrying me the most, I think.
Short term for sure. I think longer term, it's a question of coexistence. And I think as humans, we adapt. We adapt our educational systems, our health systems. We adapt how we live, how we work, how we learn, how we train, how we do whatever,
So what do you think is on the other side of this then? If say this is going to fix a lot of productivity, also a lot of thought processes, a lot of producing, bullets for workshops and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. What's on the other side? What will be important for humans? What will we be doing in 5 years? 10 years?
So I think there's partly a political element to my answer here, but I think if we acknowledge that growth is the driver for welfare, then I think AI will have the potential to drive a lot of the growth for us. That will allow us to perhaps retire when we are 65 instead of 70. Mm-hmm. But it will democratize knowledge, so it will help countries that are less developed, according to our standards at least, to get to a different educational level quicker, which I think is all good, because education is the cornerstone of a successful society anyway, right?
But that's a really good point.
Yeah. you know?
Yeah.
So
I really like.
I'm really not worried. There are enough, but listening to David, of course, we have a political discussion that we need to take, right? Because our politicians need to understand what AI is and what it isn't as well, you know? And it's not enough to read the newspaper. You really have to understand it. I mean, one of the requirements in the EU AI Act is AI literacy. And but it's a good fundamental requirement.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I really like it. I don't know exactly what AI literacy means, but it means that we're all getting a little bit smarter of what AI can.
But what should politicians then put our, you know, different.
Yeah.
What should your kids focus on in next 5-10 years in their careers and lives?
So he's already in uni. He studies robot technology, and he wants his bachelor to be in AI. So
all these people who need to build AI. Okay, great.
So he's got it. No, I think there are. You can't be whatever you want to be, you know. Because if you have to be productive for the society that raise you.
Like Chris Rock says, you can be what you're good at when they're hiring.
Exactly. Find something that you're very good at and do that, you know. Because if you find something that you're good at, you'll enjoy that as well. And the more you enjoy what you do, the better you become at it, right? If you want something but you're not particularly good at it, you know, I've got 2 electric guitars, but I haven't got the discipline to become good at playing it. So I can do the pentatonic scale, and it sounds like I'm a good blues lead guitarist, but it's you know, just fake it till you make it. But if you want to be really, really good at it, find something
Someone
that you
said everything is fake it till you make it. If you really zoom out, right?
You know, but find something that you are good at, because that's sort of. That's self-strengthening in a way, you know, because
But my point is also, should we focus on, you know, lawyers to read and write contracts, or should we focus more on the advisory side? What is
advisory side, of course?
Yeah. So what is going to be important, right? Is it
knowledge, applied knowledge? You know, when everybody can read and write, that's no longer a skill, then that's a commodity, right? So how do you make your own value? Because a personal brand value, your own personal intelligence, what you bring to the.
But I think that stresses a lot of people, right? With Gen AI, right now, feel a lot of stress. They feel like also they need to understand this in depth, and if they don't, they're missing out on something, and then they say no, and then reject it. There's a lot of people, you know, consumers who are rejecting this for that reason, right?
Yeah.
It feels
how do we remove the fear?
Yeah.
And I think going back actually to the literacy requirements, then it's how do we in general remove the fear of AI being something evil or bad or whatever, right? Because it's not.
Yeah. No, but I think we should stop anthropomorphizing it all the time. People are constantly saying it's just like an employee. Just stop saying that. It's wrong way of putting it. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
And let's stop. I'm super annoyed. Also, it's also fun to do things, AI art and all that. But most of it is still fun.
Yeah.
But it feels scary to people, because this is taking away something that is, you know, centrally something that humans do. Right. It feels like it's not doing the dishes. It's actually doing the fun stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of
creating things. We do want to see an AI model at Roskilde Festival. Orange, would you?
No, a Suno on the main stage.
Yeah, no, I'd much rather see, you know, someone else.
Performativity, then.
Oh, productivity. As always with leaps in technology, we in IBM at least, we believe that this is going to create more jobs than take away. And it is genuinely a question of how do we repurpose ourselves and make ourselves relevant in a new reality.
That's also a little bit what my question went on, right? How do we do that? You say we need to repurpose, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But what is it then?
I still think that we're trying to understand what this technology can actually do for us. We're starting to sort of see, you know, unless you're an analyst and it's about $50 trillion inside the next 50 years, I don't see where that's coming from. No. It's a potential, but I don't see where that's coming from. And actually, this isn't a race either. There's no price at the end of it if you get there quickest, right? What you have to think about is, how do I do this responsibly to protect my reputation, to protect my share price, to protect my employees as well, to protect my clients, to protect whoever I unleash AI technology against. How do I do that in a responsible way?
How do I make sure that I'm still relevant also when people start to react to this and start buying vinyl instead of having everything in streaming?
Yeah, exactly.
How am I positioned here? Where do I want to be? Is this a premium product? Is this not a premium product? Does it matter? All of those difficult questions.
What are my new business models? Where's my income? Where's my money going to come from? Right? Yeah. Don't know where this is going. I'm not worried, on behalf of my son, or if he ever gets kids. I'm not worried. I think that they're going to live in a fantastic, wonderful world where we coexist with this technology. Absolutely. And I think we have enough people worrying about how to protect our democratic elections and cybersecurity and all that anyway. So, we as consumers or users or employees or whatever, we don't have to worry about that. We have to worry about, how do we continue to stay relevant?
So, and we've talked about that, what you'd shout from a mountain. So, but just to repeat, what is the mandate for business and technology leaders right now, apart from governance?
Use cases, find them. Yeah, find them. Make sure that every part of your business understand what AI can do, and what is AI and what it isn't, and also understand that AI is just a tool. It's transformative. It has a great potential, but unless you apply it in the right areas, you're not going to succeed, right? So that's personal productivity is good. It's great, but it's not great for you as a company. It's great for your employees. If you seriously want your organization to be more streamlined, have a look at your workflows, have a look at your processes. What we do,
things already driving purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we do in IBM is what we call a What's Next challenge, and What's Next is our brand name for our AI platform. I'm not here to pitch it. Just saying, I'm not here to pitch it. I could, but I'm not. Every couple of years, every single employee in IBM are given a full week off to innovate on processes that annoys us, processes that could be improved by technology, processes that we can improve by removing obstacles, etc. Not all of that is going to end up in an AI use case, but it does two things. It improves the general levels of AI understanding across every business unit, from HR to manufacturing, right? But also it gives us such a good backlog of AI use cases we can operationalize. And as I've said, through a common risk framework, the business units have autonomy to pick those use cases based on their own ROI.
Companies already have lots of these old heat maps, right, from all the different other waves, hype waves, but they don't know where they are anymore.
Exactly.
But they could revisit them. I think that's a good place to start, right?
Exactly.
But also, I think there's just double things here. You said, first look at, what's the new value, how are things services, what are the new services you can introduce, how will the world look, your company look in 10 years? But you're also saying at the same time, okay, but let's just start looking at the right here and right now. How can we make that better? So what is it? What should people actually do here? Should they focus on 10 years from now, or should they focus very close to home?
Right now. And right now we're talking about agents. And right now a lot of agents, pre-built agents, are being launched in the marketplace. So you have HR agents that already talk to some back-end systems like SAP SuccessFactors or Workday or whatever, that allows you to...
Yeah, but they build into these systems, these big systems, right? It's not some bespoke agents. That's a difficult thing, right?
That is much more difficult, and it's still very much assistant driven as well. It's not agents yet. Still very much.
So should people actually look at agents? I don't necessarily think so. But now I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No. Well, I think you have to have an eye on that as well, because that is your vision. But you still have to understand how to apply Gen AI in your core business processes.
Yeah, you have to try to put it into some automation workflow first.
Yeah, exactly.
See how it works.
Yeah.
Give you a KPI.
Yeah.
Hans Petter, this has been a terrific episode.
We've been talking for 1.5 hours almost already?
No, we've spoken for 1 hour and 2 minutes right now,
all right.
which is already quite good, I think. But I've enjoyed the conversation very much.
And likewise.
I think it's been rich. I think it's been full. It's been around multiple things. It's also been, we've been talking about 3.5 billion different things.
We have. And if you, as a listener, are interested in more details about the use cases, just reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give you a long list of use cases that are building up to this 3.5.
Oh, that's when you say the word AI use cases, people jump on everything you say.
Yeah,
right?
I know,
that.
I
right?
know, I know,
exactly.
I know.
You have use cases. This guy said he has use cases, right?
We have use cases. Yeah.
But I only have one final question for you, Hans Petter, and I hope you're ready for that one.
You kept me up all night.
You really did. I love that.
I know you did. Yeah. What's the only constant?
Yeah, so it's also a really, really difficult question, right? But you know there'll be the ambient music. You've heard the episodes before, so it will sound like you're actually saying the answer to life, the universe, and everything, right?
42.
42, yeah. So don't just say that. Say a little bit longer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I know. Yeah,
you say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then count to 42. No,
you had me at 42,
okay.
right? Okay.
Hans Petter. So Hans Petter, what is the only constant?
To answer that, I'd like to start by quoting Frank Zappa. Do you know who that was?
Mm-hmm.
American composer who died in 1993. So before the revolution that even started with internet and all that, he said, "The computer can't tell you the emotional story. It can give you the exact mathematical design, but what's missing is the eyebrows." When you listen to Pearl Jam, for instance, and you hear Eddie Vedder sing, "I know someday you'll have a beautiful life. I know you'll be a star in somebody else's sky, but why can't it be mine?" That could have been written by a machine, but it could never be performed by a machine to the level that Eddie Vedder does it with Pearl Jam. I think the only constant is that humans have exclusive rights to human qualities in humanity. We have depth of emotion. We have creativity, we have vision, we have ambition. We invented the wheel. It's probably, arguably, the biggest invention of all time, arguably. We discovered natural laws, electricity. Imagine where we'd been without electricity. We actually invented the computers and the algorithms too. We've been in space, we walked on the moon. I think I remember when we launched one of the Discovery vehicles that are currently on Mars, the press started to attribute human qualities to them, even gendered them. He's now going to space. And I read an interview with the researchers and the people that built it, and the journalist said, "Well, won't you be sad when it one day stops working?" I said, "No, I won't. It's a piece of machine that we've built to advance the human race. It's a vehicle, it's a vessel to advance our knowledge." That's what we do. Our emotional intelligence, our curiosity, our thirst for knowledge drives us on, and I think machines will serve us more than we will serve machines. So I think that's the only constant. Human curiosity, human drive for knowledge, for progress, is still the essential constant in this reality.
And machines are here to help us achieve more.
Augment our intelligence. And we cannot underestimate the importance of depth of emotion. I asked you, would you want to see an AI algorithm perform on the Orange stage at the Roskilde Festival? No. Of course you won't. You want to see the artist.
You want to see someone raise an eyebrow.
You want to see somebody raise an eyebrow. You want somebody to deeply touch you on an emotional level.
And Hans Petter, you raised a lot of my eyebrows today, and I think I raised some of yours as well.
Absolutely. It's been a fantastic pleasure, honor. Really, really, really enjoyed it.
It's really been great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.